A big misconception in Dragon Ball GT is that Pan is Goku Jr.'s grandmother, but this isn't the Dragon Ball community's fault because they are more familiar with the English dub, and because of this, the misconception obviously spread. And in today's video, we will prove to you using a direct statement, and by also using logic, how Pan is not Goku Jr.'s grandmother, and could never logically be his grandmother based off of other factors. Now, the first way to prove this is to just use a direct statement from the Japanese version of GT's A Hero's Legacy, or shall I say, the Japanese dub if we use our subtitles. And I've basically frozen the frames for you guys to read it yourself. When Goku Jr. basically meets Goku, Goku basically gives up and says, "I am your great-great," and then he just continues and says, "I'm your grandpa Goku." Now, obviously this was made for comical purposes because Goku is so many greats ahead of Goku Jr. that it's just easier for him to say that basically Goku Jr. is his grandchild. Now later on, as Goku Jr. and Goku continue their conversation and Goku Jr. is showing a lack of confidence in himself, Goku makes a direct statement that puts this huge misconception to rest. And Goku basically says, "You're the grandson of my granddaughter's child," and Goku essentially gives up. Now you can say that Goku essentially made an error with this, but essentially Goku's getting to a very, very obvious point that the gap between Pan's age and Goku Jr.'s age is so massive. So even if you don't want to believe this yourself, Pan could never possibly be Goku Jr.'s grandmother just based off of what Goku directly said in the Japanese dub. But let's use some logic to prove even further why Pan could never be Goku Jr.'s grandmother. You see, Pan in GT A Hero's Legacy is approximately 110 years old, and the way that I came up with that exact number is because she was 9 at the beginning of Dragon Ball GT, and if you remember, after the conflict with Baby and around the time of the Super 17 arc, there was a time skip where they used the Dragon Balls to essentially restore planet Earth back to normal. And during this span, approximately a year had passed, where obviously all of the people on planet Earth were living on the recreated planet Plant, or shall we say planet Vegeta, depending on how you want to call the terms. So as a result of this directly proves that right here and right now, Pan was 110 years old. So now that we know that Pan is 110 years old, the question is, well, how does that prove that she's not Goku Jr.'s grandmother? Well, just look at the age gap yourself. We don't know the exact age of Goku Jr., but let's just try to keep the math simple and just look at Goku Jr. and take a guesstimate of what his age could be, and say that he's 10, just to make the math simple. And essentially the point that we're getting at here is that if Pan is 110 years old, that means that Pan was approximately 100 when Goku Jr. was born. Now, does that make any possible sense using common sense that Pan, at 100 years old, could be Goku Jr.'s grandmother? Pan would have had a kid that had a kid at an extremely late age, considering the fact that if she was 100, let's say Pan had a kid at like 30, then she would have had like a 70-year-old child that would have given birth to Goku Jr. Now, in all likelihood, this would have to have been a male offspring in order to have a kid at that age, because obviously in real life women can't have kids at that age. But if we also go back to Goku's statement in saying granddaughter's grandchild, Goku's clearly apparently saying that the link between Goku Jr. and Pan is through a female offspring. Now obviously there must have been males that were mixed in between all of the gaps that had passed, but essentially we're getting to the point where we can directly say that because of the massive age gap between Pan and Goku Jr., there's no possible way that Goku Jr. could be her direct grandchild because there's just too much of an age gap. Now, this brings up an even bigger question about Dragon Ball GT, because at the end of Dragon Ball GT, or shall we say at the beginning of A Hero's Legacy, it seems like there's a bunch of missing family members. Now, obviously, all of the main heroes that we know, like Gohan and Vegeta, and then other characters like Bulma and stuff obviously passed away a long time ago. There's still clearly a lot of characters that are in between Pan and Goku Jr. that we have to wonder about. And for whatever reason that we see in GT A Hero's Legacy, Pan is the one that's raising Goku Jr. Now this brings up another question. Considering how many potential family members that are in between them, why is it that Pan is raising Goku Jr.? Well, there's a very simple answer to this that we can deduce from how Dragon Ball works. And basically, The writers didn't feel like creating a whole bunch of in-between family members that would make much more logical sense and wanted the story to focus on Pan and Goku Jr. and didn't expect that we would be over-analyzing this to the degree that we're analyzing it. So as a result, they basically just wrote the other characters off and just made Pan the essential guardian of Goku Jr., as we can see in the scene where he was living with her. Now, as a post-edit, it's important to point out that it's rather interesting that Pan was on her deathbed in A Hero's Legacy, and nobody cared to come visit her other than Goku Jr., who was by her side. Now, because of this would basically imply that all of Goku Jr.'s other family members are either dead or away somehow. And even if you were to go with the misconception that Pan is Goku Jr.'s grandmother and just accept it, even though it absolutely makes no sense for all the reasons we just said, we also have to remember something else too. That would still prove that even if Pan is Goku Jr.'s grandmother, there's still a mother-level link in between the two characters that we have to take into consideration. And because of the fact that that family or parent is nowhere to be seen or mentioned, for whatever reason, we can maybe make a deduction in saying that there was probably something horrible that happened on Earth that either killed these family members, or for whatever reason, these family members are just completely fine with Goku Jr. living with them because they're taking care of other things in their lives. And as a result of that, we could ultimately come to the conclusion that, based off of the fact that Goku Jr.'s entire family lineage just seems to quietly have disappeared, that something we didn't see on screen happen over the 100-year time skip resulted in Goku Jr. being the only one basically along with Pan. Now this paints an even bigger question as to how exactly was this threat somehow neutralized. It's very, very difficult to come up with an exact answer to this, but the problem with the death theory is that there's just too many family members in between Pan and Goku Jr. to just say they all basically just died. And it would also be weird that Pan would somehow be the one person alive, considering that even if she's strong relative to the other characters who may be younger that have Saiyan genetics, they may potentially be as strong or stronger than her, so it would make no sense why she's alive, but they're not. And as a post-edit, it's also important to remember another major point that we see at the end of Dragon Ball GT's anime in episode 64, which obviously would link up to A Hero's Legacy, and this is the existence of Vegeta Jr. You see, when we see Vegeta Jr., we actually see that his mother, his direct mother, is actually at the tournament with him, and this direct descendant of Bulma, obviously, is his direct parent, which clearly means that if you look at his family line, if there was a major threat that was killing the people of planet Earth, that he would have been affected too, but he has a normal parent, so clearly this is only an issue strictly for Goku Jr.'s family line as to where are they, but yet we can see Vegeta Jr.'s direct mother. So as a result of this, the death theory doesn't really make sense, and the most logical answer is that his family members are just basically away off screen, doing and living normal lives, and we just never really got a chance to see them because the writers didn't think they mattered. But we could ultimately prove with absolute certainty using a direct statement and by also using common sense and logic, looking at the age gap between Pan and Goku Jr., that there is no possible way that she's his grandmother as proven in this video today. Now, when I was actually editing this video, I actually found a third piece of evidence that actually proves that Goku Jr. is actually not Pan's grandson. And it's actually, if we look at the Japanese version once again, in episode 64, when the announcer, or the announcer's descendants, because he clearly is based off of the original tournament announcer, makes the statement that Goku Jr. is the great-great-great-great-grandson of both Goku, which shares his name. Now, why is this extremely important, you're probably wondering? Well, let's just do some very, very basic math looking at all four greats. If Goku is the great times 4, that would mean Gohan is the great times 3, which would mean that Pan is the great times 2, meaning that Pan's child would be the great times 1, and then, obviously, the regular grandmother would be the child of the great, and then, obviously, you have Goku Jr.'s parent, and then Goku Jr., therefore giving you direct proof itself, in addition to all of the additional proof that I had already given at the beginning of this video, that Goku Jr. definitely 100% in fact is not Pan's grandson, simply just based off of doing the math of what the tournament announcer said in episode 64 of Dragon Ball GT. So if you had any level of skepticism that Pan was Goku Jr.'s grandmother in this video, this has been debunked times 3.